Welcome everyone to Mazda Motorsports Moments, episode number 4. I'm your host, Tony LaPorta. On today's episode, we are going to take a unique look at behind the scenes and introduce some guests who spend some time behind the camera lens as they go to work every race season capturing Mazda's true love for artful design, whether it's the cars going 200 miles an hour or the athletes that represent Mazda Motorsports in the pit area. So stick with us because this is going to be a fun and very different episode of Mazda Motorsports Moments. So when we talk about Mazda and Mazda Motorsports' love for artful design, one of the individuals charged with the task of capturing that artful design in the vehicles, in the athletes that represent Mazda Motorsports. Thankfully today, we have Al Arena, Mazda Motorsports photographer. Al, we really are grateful for you joining us. You've been with Mazda Motorsports and shooting for them since 2008, so over 10 years now. You have fantastic work. What is it like getting to represent Mazda and take the images that represent them as a brand worldwide?
It's amazing. Actually, I love it. As much as there's the roller coaster for the drivers and for the teams, for if they're going to do well, what's going to happen throughout the weekend. It's almost as much of a roller coaster for me. Um, Even like within a session, throughout the whole weekend, throughout this season, it's sort of a nonstop feeling of making sure that everybody's happy with what you're creating, but also being part of the team and feeling those moments as they're happening.
Absolutely. Now, I know over the 10 plus years you've been shooting, you've collected, I'm sure, millions of images. I'm a massive fan of your work. I think you shoot incredible stuff all the time, even when the conditions are against you. You still pull out masterful work. I know you've brought 6 very different, unique images of Mazda Motorsports for the show today. And I was hoping maybe you could show them to us and sort of walk us and talk us through them each.
Sure. Yeah. The first image was actually one of my first ever car to car shoots. It was at the Monterey Historics, and it car to car is so different than just shooting trackside or shooting the pits and paddock, where you're sort of just creating what's happening in front of you. Whereas doing a car to car, you sort of get to be more so the conductor. And so this was the first one that I shot that I got to tell the drivers what they were doing. I actually ended up, instead of shooting out of the back end of the car, which is how most car to cars happen, I decided to go out of the sunroof, because it was a slightly different angle. I would be able to get a little bit more overhead as opposed to getting mostly the car in the foreground and not as much the cars in the back, um, which to me felt like a great idea until I got back into pit lane post car to car and realized I had a lovely little circle of bruises around my whole torso. But I don't think I would have changed that because I really like the way this shot came out. And after doing this shot, I've gotten to do so many more car to cars with Mazda, and each time it's kind of fun to just see what I can do a little bit differently, change up how it looks, change up my positioning, and sort of keep it fresh and different.
I was lucky enough to drive the RX 792, which is the one with the huge wing on the back. So of course I was super excited to drive something with that crazy amount of downforce, but more so to drive a rotary for the first time, because the first time I drove the historic car was my first time ever driving a rotary powered car. When I got into Mazda, in 2013, that was the start of the diesels, the end of the RX-8 era. So I never ever got a chance to drive the rotary powered stuff. So I was super excited to hear the sounds of the rotary engine inside the cockpit and feel the torque of it. But man, the history behind those cars, and when you sit in one of those with an H pattern gearbox again, no power steering, it's really humbling to think, those guys back in the day, how strong they must have been to be able to do a 24-hour race like that, hour stints. We kind of almost feel spoiled nowadays, but then again, the cars, have, we're going a bit faster now. Cornering speeds are higher, so I guess it makes sense. I couldn't imagine, no power steering in our RT24P, but just to go back to the roots, and drive a car like that is very special. And it was just a dream come true, especially to do it at Monterey. I have to say it's probably one of the scariest things that we have to do. Because I mean, speaking to the most recent car-to-car shoot we had to do, which was at Daytona, and the both Mazda RT 24Ps. You only get a very small slot, time slot to do it. So it just happened to be, really early in the morning. I think it was like a 7:45 a.m. car shoot, and it was super cold. So you can't get any tire temperatures in the tires, and the engine's super cold to begin with. You don't really have enough time to warm up the engine, that early, because they only open the gates, at, let's say, 7:15 or so. So with that being said, the car is still trying to warm itself up, so it idles really high, and it kind of jolts the car forward. And obviously the van with the photographers in it isn't going that fast. Al is hanging out of the trunk of the car trying to get the shots in. I mean, I don't know if I could do that. She's strapped in with a harness, but I still don't think I'd have the guts to do it. She's pretty crazy when it comes to getting the shot, if you will. But yeah, we have to get super close to each other, and they're kind of telling us, no, closer. And I'm like, I'm pretty close right now. The last thing you want to do is rub some paint on a car-to-car shoot before qualifying, if you will. But it is pretty crazy when you get in the infield too, and there's no tire temperature, so we kind of have a big understeer, and the car's jolting you forward, so you're getting closer to the van. It's pretty hectic. And then it's pretty cool because we have one of the engineers in the car getting talking to Al, because she's right next to her, and Al's saying, the kind of shots that she wants, and the communications is huge, because you only have 2 laps to get the shots in. So and you look at the pictures afterwards, and when you're in the car and you're like, there's no way this can look good. I mean, we're so close together, we're going so slow, but it's pretty incredible to see what they're able to capture through the lens. And it's a testament. I mean, I always wait for the password to come so I can see the gallery, because the photos are just so incredible.
This next shot is one of the ones that I did at Sebring. We unfortunately don't get a lot of chances to shoot sunsets, and we only get one chance to shoot sunrise. So you really want to maximize your shooting when you're doing it. There's different spots you can go to, different ways you can shoot it, and sometimes you kind of go into that analysis paralysis, trying to create the perfect shot. So sometimes you just sort of start going with your old standbys, and there's a little bit of guilt associated with that, but I feel like sometimes just knowing what you're going to get is okay. This is one of those situations where I love this shot. It makes me happy every time I shoot it. And you are in a spot where you don't have a whole lot of room, and there's quite a few photographers that know this spot that you're going to. So you're all kind of crunched together, waiting for that perfect light. It comes through, you get it. And then you just kind of all disperse again and go to your different spots and work on your own. So it's that few minutes of sort of being around the other photographers, creating this image, and then going your separate ways. What's really interesting actually is if you look at a lot of the photographers who were standing right next to each other, shoulder to shoulder, I would say that the majority of our photos look different, even standing from almost the same spot. And I think that kind of showcases how from one person to the other, you're going to get sort of a different look. So even though I had shot this image that was kind of one of my favorites, an old standby, what made it a little bit more special was actually that the cars were running together. They don't do that a ton. It's really exciting when they do it, because you get that impact of the team together, like physically together. And like I said, the light at the end of the day, you only get 1 or 2 laps, and the fact that they were running together, the light was great, and it was like one of those moments that it kind of happens and then it's done, and you have to just be happy that you got what you wanted to get in those few minutes.
You have to think, we're at Sebring. We're in the middle of, pretty much where Okeechobee is. It's no road America, let's be honest. And it's a very historic track. They haven't touched it much, which is why it is so unique and which is why I love it so much. But, when you're in the car, you don't have this, this vantage point, I guess. It doesn't look, as beautiful as it looks in the picture, which is amazing that she's able to capture this. I'm gonna gamble and say we're going into 13 here, and really I never noticed like all these trees in the background, obviously because you're looking forward, but and to get the sunset in it, it really captures a lot of emotion too, because it's you have the dust flying up from the diffusers of the cars, and she was able to get it 2 Mazdas nose to tail too. So I mean it's pretty incredible. But it looks like a beautiful picture, but it's not as beautiful in the car, because when you're going down the back straightaway going into the sun, that's the one thing we fight over, as drivers, fighting for the stints. Like, I don't want sundown. Please, whatever you do, don't give me sundown, because you're completely blind going into 17 for it. So I guess you don't really get to appreciate it that much when you're inside the cockpit. But yeah, it's a gorgeous photo. I will say that. Good job, Al.
So this next shot is Tristan during a driver change practice, actually. Tristan definitely is one of my favorite guys to shoot, partly just because I've been shooting him for so long. I know a lot of his mannerisms, how he does certain things that he probably doesn't even notice that I know. Like when he gets into the car, he does this sort of like bounce like hop thing, that I'm always that's his tell that I know that he's about to get into the car, in the same way that when he does driver changes, even during driver change practice, he does it with gusto. So it makes it so whenever I'm shooting him during driver changes or driver change practice, I know that it's going to be an interesting shot to get. I remember the first time I was allowed to actually shoot on pit lane. Not every photographer can shoot on pit lane. It's something that you have to be given the rights to do, and something you have to earn it. You have to earn the ability to go shoot on pit lane. I remember the first time I was going to shoot, standing at the wall, just thinking to myself, just go over the wall, go over the wall, go over the wall. And then I'd see a car go by and I'd be like, maybe a second. Okay, I'm gonna wait okay, now go. And for a long time, you're spending a lot of your energy just making sure that you are staying safe. And so your energy is not as much going into creating the photos, because part of doing race photography is that you are sometimes given access to areas that are a little bit more sketchy, that you want to keep your focus on staying safe. Pit lane is absolutely one of those places where if you take one step out of where you should be standing, you have the potential of getting in the middle of a pit stop, potentially ruining somebody's chance for a win or a pole, or getting in the way of a car and having either bodily harm on yourself or harm to the car. So it's definitely a balancing act of keeping yourself safe, keeping the people around you happy and unannoyed by your presence, and getting that good shot. This shot definitely kind of showcases my feeling on most driver changes that I do, which is just getting all of the action in one photo, in one frame. They always say like a picture's worth 1,000 words. It's basically you're trying to get the whole ballet that is a driver change into one frame.
When I'm getting out of the car, trying to sprint around the back of the car to get out of the way of the tire changers that are about to kind of jump over the wall next. You don't notice that Al's standing right there, and she's close. I don't know if she's, I don't know what lens she's got on it, but it seems like she's mighty close. Which is funny, even when we're about to peel out of the pits as well. They usually stand kind of either right at the front of the car or right at the back, and most of the times you don't even notice it if you're getting in the car. You only notice it kind of, if I was watching the pit stop from the wall, you're like, oh, she's kind of close to the car. I don't know if she's gonna get clipped when we get out of here, but she always stays out of the way. She's really good about that. But there's a funny backstory to this, because I remember this distinctly, and you can see the intensity in my eyes. Our crew chief that was for this year, I think this was back in this was the first year of the RT24P, so I think that was 2017, if I'm not mistaken. I remember that was Link Smith as the crew chief for our car, and he's a cowboy. He's pretty hard. He likes to pump us up. So we're always trying to knock a tenth of a second, and oh god, if we could get 0.2 of a second off of a driver change, that's huge. So he was always pumping us up, and he's like, and I remember him saying, actually, we're practicing driver changes here at Sebring. He's like, just pretend you're on fire and you need to get out of the car. So I was like, all right, fine. Every time I'm going to get out of this car now when we're doing driver changes, I'm just going to pretend I'm on fire. So I remember getting a couple bruises, and I didn't care if I knocked the wheel. He's like, I don't care if you knock the wheel, just get out of the car as fast as possible. And sure enough, we knocked, I think, like half a second off the driver change just from that. So you can see the intensity in my eyes, pretending I'm on fire, trying to run around the car, and I still have the fire behind me. So I'm trying to get out of the way as fast as possible. But that was a fun memory, and I remember that little story. It's a little detail, but you remember that. I remember that every time I look at this photo.
Next up, one of the photos that I chose was the photos through the Christmas lights at Daytona. Like the photo at sunset at Sebring, we don't have a lot of chances to shoot at night. Daytona is one of the events where you have all the night. And it might seem like it's dark, there's one spot, it's not a lot going on, but it actually feels like you shoot the first part of the race during the day, you cover all of your spots, and then you can actually, it gets to be nighttime, and you can actually go to every single spot again and shoot all over again, because everything looks so completely different at night. I actually debate with my husband sometimes, why do you shoot so much during a 24-hour race? And that reason is because you're basically shooting two different races. You're shooting during the day and you're shooting at night, which gives you more opportunities, but also more opportunities to want to go out and create more. Within a 24-hour race, a lot of people just think about racing in those 24 hours. But for photographers, and I'm sure the crew and the teams, but I'm just mostly thinking about photographers because those are the people I'm around and what I am. Our days are at least 36 hours. And even when the race starts, you've already been shooting your heart out, trying to get the cool angles. And when I did this photo, it was around 3 a.m. You're kind of losing that energy. You feel like you've kind of given yourself you've given all this energy towards creating art, creating these moments. And you get to the middle of the night, you don't think that there's anything else you can shoot. And then you go trackside, you think you're going to shoot, and then you find something completely different. And it's sort of this re-energizing moment where it allows you to know you're going to be able to get through, you're going to be able to get to the sunrise, you're going to be able to get to hopefully podium. And having those moments is definitely one of the best ways to get through long races, because it helps you realize why you're there and what you're trying for.
Driving, RT24P around Daytona at night is really For me, it's a comforting feeling. You know, it's calming. You kind of really get in the zone. You obviously don't notice all these Christmas lights or the Ferris wheel. I mean, it's not as dark as a place like Sebring, but it is still dark. You know, you go into the infield and there's not a lot of lights until you really get out into the banking. But I really love the night racing just because you really just do get in a zone, and you click off laps, and you get through traffic. You're able to kind of plan ahead because you see their taillights, and for me it's easier to like judge distances, going into the bus stop, and you can really kind of play with it a lot more, I think. It's just it's a different way of seeing it, if you will.
The next image that I chose was the Spec Miata start at the NASA Championships. There are so many Mazdas at events like this that it's sort of like a photographer's playground, on track and off track. There's just so much happening. The enthusiasm from the race car drivers, the enthusiasm from the crew, the fact that they don't hide, they're just out and about, means that getting candids is that much more fun. And just the mass amounts of Mazda's tracks, like on track, you get these just swarms of cars going by, and it makes for these awesome group shots, especially for this start shot where they had so many cars racing, they actually had to split it into 2 races. And because of that, it just makes for an epic photo. Just the fact that they're all together, they're maximizing all of the space. For anybody who's ever been at COTA, you know that there's no shortage of space, and they just use every inch of it. What I really love about shooting also at these grassroots events is I get a little bit more freedom to create and play around and kind of create more of like an artistic style to a lot of the photos that I'm producing for Mazda, which is a really fun thing for me to get to do. A lot less PR style or traditional style. It allows me to sort of think outside the box, and it makes for a really fun weekend.
Well, first of all, that image really, I'm proud to be in that image. It really encapsulates everything that I love about racing, Mazdas and Spec Miata, specifically. That many people fanned out that wide. I think at one point you could count 8 or 10 cars wide going into turn 1. I've always called it motocross with doors. Your elbows are out, you're charging into turn 1, and you hope everybody's going to come out at the end. And that's the part that I love about racing with Spec Miata. My memory of that race is the hard-fought qualifying. There was variable conditions. There was rain. There was a mix of everything. The best racers in the country were there. Toyo had put up an $85,000 purse. Everybody wanted to win this race, and there I was going into turn 1, and I actually went through turn 1 in the lead. Unfortunately, I ended up third. I actually ended up racing possibly one of the better races I've ever raced. Not good enough to win on the track, but I had the best seat in the house. Todd Burris and Chris Holderman, who had the drive of the weekend, were there dicing it out in front of me, and myself and Brian Henderson were in 3rd and 4th, and we literally were hanging on. We couldn't actually challenge for the lead, but we were doing everything to compete with the guys. In the end, we finished 3rd and 4th with Todd winning on the track and Chris Holderman 2nd, or vice versa. I can't even remember that part, because my memory is the race, the actual racing and the hard-fought part of it. In the end, the race finished in the tech shed, and with tech shed drama, as often happens, unfortunately, in our class. And I ended up victorious, and I ended up with a wonderful prize giving. And I have to say thank you to Toyo. But it's not the way anybody wants to win a race. You want to do it on the track, elbows out, having left nothing behind, and putting your arm around your buddy at the end of the day who kicked your butt and said, that was the way we did it. But anyway, that's my memory. And that picture, so proud to be in that picture. What a beautiful shot it is. It encapsulates everything that I love about Spec Miata.
So the last shot that I chose was a start shot for MX5 Cup at Watkins Glen. MX5 Cup is very near and dear to my heart because it's where I started, and I love the racing. I love everybody in the series. I love the drivers. I love the attitudes of people. It it's one of my absolute favorite things to shoot from beginning when I started shooting it in 2008 to now. The personalities shine through, and it's wonderful to shoot the candids. The on-track action is so exciting that I want to sometimes just stop and watch, and B is in incredibly like high anxiety because as I'm running from trackside to pit lane, there's a very good chance that there will be a lead change. So I'll have been shooting the wrong person the whole time to get the first place finisher. So it's a lot of just balancing my time on track and maximizing those moments. So this is one of those times where I thought I was just going to be shooting a traditional start shot. This event actually had a mix of rain and actually snow. One of the MX5 Cup drivers, Sarah Montgomery, actually, while we were sitting on pre-grid, or while they were sitting on pre-grid and I was shooting their lovely faces as they were getting ready, she was sitting there in her car. It started to snow and she goes, "Never seen snow before." I'm like, well, you're about to go driving it, so good luck. She's awesome person again to photograph. So this was one of those races where that was going to be normal, shoot start shot, go out from there, and shoot my heart out until got to be right before podium, and then get back in time to shoot checkered flag and podium. That did not happen. If you look at the image, the front part of the start shot is clean and great, and everybody has the right positioning, and the back part of the photo is just chaos. And those are one of the moments where you think that you're going to get exactly what you came out for, and you come away from it with something a little bit different. I felt bad for the drivers that were in the back end of the start, but it made for an impactful image, and it was a little bit different than the norm.
Well, Al, we really appreciate you coming on and making Mazda Motorsports Moments episode number 4 a pretty unique and different kind of episode. Personally, I'm a massive fan of all the content you create for Mazda Motorsports. Thanks for capturing great moments, whether it's the cars on track battling or the drivers and the teams once the helmets come off in victory lane. So thanks not just for coming on, but thanks for all the work you do for Mazda Motorsports behind the scenes.
Thanks for having me on here. It's actually really cool to get to talk a little bit about the imagery. For the most part, our job is sort of to melt into the background and to capture what's happening in front of us. So it's kind of cool to get to talk about what goes into that.
Well, that'll do it here for Mazda Motorsports Moments episode number 4, and a little bit of a different look, as we said. Massive thanks to Al Arena for all of her work she does behind the camera lens in capturing some of those crucial Mazda moments. We want to let you guys know that those images that she talked about are going to be rolled out and made available as wallpapers very, very shortly on all of Mazda Motorsports' social media accounts. So be sure to check in for all of those. For everyone at Mazda Motorsports, I'm Tony LaPorta saying thanks for watching, and we'll see you down the road.